Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Trump Trolls Trump. I do not need to repeat myself. I do just like to point out, however, that some guy is walking around using my name and it pisses me off, so let's mock him. Well, that's not the reason to mock him. There are so many others, though, which is why this is a weekly show. It has now been 271 days since Inauguration Day. Does that sound like a very long time, or does it just feel like a very long time? Whatever the case, we're taking a look back at week 38. Donald, and I honestly, I find this a little weird, has been contemplating his own mortality lately. Why is that weird? Well, because I don't think he believes that he's mortal. I'm not saying he thinks he's immortal. I'm just saying I don't think he looks at it in those terms. He is a nihilist, and he does not believe that anything can and here's the more disturbing part, should survive beyond him. So the fact that he is starting to reveal some of his unconscious concerns should, how do I put this delicately, scare the shit out of us, quite frankly. So it's almost as if he can see the end is near. I don't know. Or at least that his ability to suppress that knowledge is showing some cracks, shall we say. And he was maybe beginning to think that all the bad things he's done in his entire life may come back to haunt. Who am I kidding? No, there is no self-awareness. There is no reckoning. There is no wondering about something like redemption for such a person. But again, there's still a little weirdness going on around Donald's thoughts vis-a-vis the afterlife. On Air Force One this week, Fox State TV's Peter Doocy asked Donald whether he thinks he might actually go to heaven for his many good deeds. Oh, jeez. Wow. How much do they pay these people? Because I'm trying to, how much would I have to be paid in order to train myself in the way I would need to be trained? I mean, I would need ninjas. I would need Zen Buddhist monks. I would need people throwing tennis balls at my head while running through. I don't know what I'm saying, but what would it take in order for me to be able to say something like, do you think, Donald, you're going to go to heaven for the many good deeds you've done, with a straight face? Come on. Anyway, I guess Peter Doocy either gets paid vast amounts of money or, and these things aren't mutually exclusive, of course, because he works at Fox, and or he's so deeply stupid, corrupt, and vile that these things just roll trippingly off his tongue. Anyway, Donald, do you think you're going to heaven for all of the many, countless, imaginary, fictional good things you've done in your miserable life? It's kind of a tricky question. I mean, I guess it's a tricky question if you believe in such things and have the kind of belief system in which there is an equal and opposite place to heaven. And now that is not true for all belief systems, but it is for the one that Donald lies about belonging to. Christianity has a heaven and a hell. It's binary. It's one or the other. Let's leave purgatory aside for the moment. Let's watch his response if we must, and you dare.
You had talked a couple weeks ago, you were doing an interview, and you talked about how you hope to end the war in Ukraine because it might help you get into heaven. How does this help? Does this help?
I mean, I'm being a little cute. I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven, okay? I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly in Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven.
I'm not going to make heaven, but I'm already in heaven. Jesus Christ. If this is heaven and we're all there with Donald, what does that mean? Basically, all of this just confirms my belief system, which is not to have one. Anyway, the fact that Donald is at least recognizing that he's not heaven bound is revealing in this way. He is finally, and it's not hard for the it's not easy for the little guy to connect dots in this way. But he has finally figured out that the whole process by which one gets into heaven is rigged against him, and it is a Democrat hoax. Congratulations for figuring that one out. If Donald is suddenly concerned about where his eternal rest may or may not be. And by the way, just seriously, he does not think about such things. I can't adequately explain why this hell and heaven stuff has come up in the last few weeks. But this is not something with which he concerns himself consciously, because again, he doesn't believe in a greater power. He is the higher power. Okay? So he's going to end up wherever he thinks deserves to end up. His son Eric, however, that beacon of religious purity and sincerity, has no reservations about Donald's afterlife. Here he is responding to Donald's qualified comments about whether or not he's heaven bound. Who can say, really? Eric can.
Make no mistake, he is heaven bound. He's probably too humble in a certain way to say that. I can say that as a son, because I've seen the hand of God on him for a very long time, guiding him through the most unthinkable, dark process. And then we get to a day like yesterday, which is, was so beautiful. But he is heaven bound, and I can tell you, maybe the one thing he does that might have influenced heaven is, I think there's a lot less people going to heaven, meaning they're going to heaven slower because you stop the death and destruction around the world.
First of all, it's fewer people, idiot. Secondly, what? So, he stopped the death and destruction so people aren't dying anymore? Now that, if you need proof of the hand of God being on somebody, I guess it's that. Nobody's dying. Thanks, God. Oh, wait, sorry. I got carried away because Eric is such a moving, charismatic speaker that I just got swept along the hand of God. Fuck you. Because here's my question. Has Donald really slowed down the number of people getting into heaven because people aren't dying anymore? Or, just bear with me. Or is he, to the extent he's even able to be worried about such things, is it because he and his regime are killing so many people? I used to think, that having massive amounts of blood on your hands, including the blood of innocent children you're killing by convincing their parents not to get them vaccinated, for example, or just blowing up random boats in the Caribbean just because, would be the kind of thing that would hasten your welcome into a place that is not heaven. But again, I don't believe in such things. So, because Donald is such a sophisticated thinker, he is able to keep many profound ideas in his head at once. For example, on the one hand, Is he heaven bound? On the other hand, what's up with his fucking hair? Time magazine. That's right. The new cover of Time magazine revealed two things. Donald is incredibly thin skinned, of course. Well, I mean, that's not really a revelation. That is just a fact of life, a fact of his life. But something else was revealed. At 1:30 on Tuesday morning, Donald posted this to his failing social media platform. Quote, Time magazine wrote a relatively good story about me, but the picture may be the worst of all time. They disappeared my hair. What? And then had something floating on top of my head that looked like a floating crown, but an extremely small one. Really weird. I never liked pictures from underneath angles, but this is a super bad picture and deserves to be called out. What are they doing and why? Unquote. Yes, what are they doing and why? First of all, a tiny little crown. A crown. So they disappeared his hair. I don't know what that means. Like you disappear undocumented workers? Like in that way, disappeared your fucking hair? Did they essentially eradicated your hair's right to due process? Is that what's happening in this picture? Something clearly nefarious. Oh, I know. Pictures taken from a low angle. I have to agree with him there. Nobody looks good under such circumstances. But some of us don't look good under any circumstances, whether we have hair or tiny little crowns. So let's take this serious. Let's CSI this, okay? This was a travesty of justice. So let's show a close up of the cover, please. Oh boy. All right, it's worse than I thought. I have to agree once again with Donald. How could they do this to him? How could they? He looks like himself. So there you go. And I actually cannot think of anything worse than being that person. Yep. Disappeared hair, tiny crown, no due process rights. To what? I don't know. But he continues to be a total embarrassment. And to those of you watching, just remember this. On your darkest day, you have one thing to cling on to. You are not that man. I have a question for you guys. Did you know? Pop quiz. We like doing those here. Did you know that Joe Biden was behind the insurrection on January 6th? Yes, really. He was. I mean, because the only other possibility is that Donald is either lying or wrong. And that is neither of those is a possibility. How could Donald Trump be lying or wrong? Oh yeah, that's right. That's all he does is lie and be wrong. Because just this week, in another very late night or early morning, depending posting, he wrote this in all caps. Quote, the Biden FBI placed 274 agents into the crowd on January 6th. If this is so, which it is, a lot of very good people will be owed big apologies. What a scam. Do something. And then he, of course, has to remind us who he is. Or is he reminding himself? Who's to say, really? Well, remember that pop quiz that I gave you before reading this latest bit of insanity? Who was president on January 6, 2021? Oh, yeah, Donald was. Oops. Here's another question. Who's president now? Like seriously, who is in a position to do something? Who is he talking to exactly? Is there somebody else who could do something? Like look into the horrors of January 6th? Oh, we were doing that already. Guess who told them to stop? Yeah. Moving on, the government shutdown that began on October the 1st is still going on as of this taping. It could end up being the longest shutdown in the history of this country. You know who has no qualms about that whatsoever. That's right. That's right. Holier than thou, House Speaker Mike Johnson. He even went so far as to put the House of Representatives into recess and send everybody home in order to avoid any debate at all. Why? I mean, those guys are still getting paid, by the way. Well, one thing Johnson wants to avoid is having to swear in Democrat Adelita Grijalva of Arizona's 7th District, who could be, and I think it's fair to say would be, if she were sworn in, the final deciding vote that would force the release of the Epstein Files. And that cannot happen. Johnson cannot afford to let that happen. This week, during a meeting with the press, Johnson revealed that he actually has no strategy whatsoever to deal with a government shutdown. He, of course, laid blame at the feet of the Democrats. But we know what's really going on here. He would rather bring the country to its knees than allow the truth about the Epstein Files to get out. So watch here as he just twists the truth into a pretzel to protect his boss, Donald.
It's a great question. Manu asks, why don't I change my strategy? I don't have any strategy, Manu. All I am able to do is come to this microphone every day, look right into the camera, and plead with the American people, as Chairwoman McClain said, to call your Senate Democrats and ask them to do the right thing. We're not playing games. They're playing a game. We're not.
Yeah, they're not playing games, says the guy who refuses to swear in a duly elected congresswoman, which last I checked is sort of akin to overturning the results of a free and fair election. But Johnson comes by it honestly. He's a fucking Republican. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here. There was much more we could have talked about, but these people are exhausting. And I think we need to pace ourselves. So we will be back next week because there is one thing we can be sure of. Well, there are many things we can be sure of. Like, the sun is going to rise in the east and set in the west. Gravity. Evolution. Well, I'm beginning to question that one. Anyway, you understand. One thing other than those other things that we can be sure of every week is that Donald and his minions will embarrass themselves. And we must be here to pick up the gauntlet they throw down on a daily basis to mock them mercilessly. And that includes you, baby JD Vance. All right. Thank you for being here. See you next week. If you would like to help, please like and share this video with your friends and, your enemies. That would be fun for all of us. And subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks.